What's up YouTube, Dale here from Zephyr Wargames, and today I'm going to bring you an update to Vanquished Souls. Now that's right, with this Vanquished Soul build, it is going to be without Pot of Prosperity because a lot of people are like, well, what can I play instead of that? And I thought I'd bring you a couple of different options. On top of that as well, I've tried to make the main deck as generic as possible. So what that means is it doesn't take into account any local environments. Now what I mean by that is, for example, if your local environment would auto lose to something like there can only be one, then you'd put that in your main deck. I'll show you a side deck as well at the end of the video with some other options as well that you can look into and play. Adapt it dependent on your local environment, and I'm just going to here to give you a couple of different techs, a couple of different changes that I can play with the deck or I've been using with the deck and have been doing very, very well for me. So with all of that out of the way, please smash that like button, hit that notification bell and subscribe so you don't miss out on any more upcoming content. So starting off with the monsters. Now, as I do with all of the Vanquish Soul kind of profiles I do, is I quite like to do them in attribute style. So just so you can see the type of earths we play, the type of fires we play, and you'll see the balance as we go through the list of exactly what you're getting, what you're using, and why we go with that particular range. So, start off with, of course, Triple Raisin, pretty straightforward and simple on that one. And then for our other fires, of course, you've got Ash Blossom, your Kashtira Raitar, and then I still like to main deck the one Kurikara and the one Dogoran. And the reason that I main deck these is it gives me that option that should I go first, should I go second, I've got ways of being able to break an opponent's board, and that's where Small World comes in. Now to me, Small World is probably the best single search card for the deck. Yes, you can consider Pot of Prosperity, but Pot of Prosperity will give you one of 6 options, so if you don't see the option you need or you want, it's not going to be that good. You can look at other cards as well, like Yugioh to get you directly to Raisin, but I'm not personally a fan of that. What I like about Small World is it gives me that option to go to Raisin for a starter if I need it, but it can also unlock possibilities to get me to a specific hand trap. So if I know I'm against Branded and I'm like, right, okay, Ash Blossom ends their turn and I win the duel from that point on, then I'm going to go for that. If I feel that I'm going second and my opponent lets Small World through because they're like, what's the worst that they can get, and I get directly to a Kaiju, that can get rid of the towers or the issue that they might have on the board. Kurikara is also another one as well that you kind of want to be searching after your opponent's already gone activate, 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 and you go, okay, well, my last card's now going to be Small World, and I go, right, okay, I can't stop that, and you go Kurikara, Tribute, 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 and you've just got a fat stat boss monster that you're going to be able to push the game for as well. So that's it for your fire lineup. The next one is going to be the dark lineup. So for the dark lineup, of course, you are playing triple Vanquish Soul Heavy Borga. Now there are some builds where you can actually cut Heavy Borga and Mad Love down to 2s each if you wanted to. I'm still playing 3 and 3. Now obviously I've got exactly 3 targets in the deck that Mad Love can use, but the idea is, again, what you've got to try and keep in your mind is that these can then be utilized as bridges. They can be used as discard fodder. They're going to be used extenders, XYZ materials, you name it. They're going to get the usage out of having exactly 3 of each of these cards, which is so important to play. Now maybe when we get the new fire one in Age of Overlord, which doesn't come out until like October time or even November time, we still have a good couple of months for that, you might look at changing the ratios of these, or at least one of them down 1, if not 2. For the final darks, I am main decking the Bestials. Now this is one of the interchangeable engines that you can play. Now the reason that I am main decking the Bestials is I can play it no matter what my opponent plays. Obviously I get more advantage if my opponent is playing a deck that is relying on lights and darks, but for me naturally I've got options of being able to banish a Mad Love, I've got the option to banish a Borga should I need to, and on top of that as well, Bestial Magnamut can also search you out your Vanquish Soul Caesar as another option as well. So it does have plenty of options, and you can keep looping back from the graveyard. The fact of Lubellion is, Druidstorm is very, very important as well. And the one thing you've got to remember of how the Vanquish Soul deck works, which is why Borgar's draw is so important, which is why, or one of the reasons why you might want to not play Pot of Prosperity in the deck, is the fact that you want to maintain your hand traps for the attributes. You only ever really want to be dropping the hand trap from your hand to the graveyard if you've already used the effect that requires this attribute, you've already got that attribute in the hand, or it's automatically going to stop your opponent a lot more than the effect you're trying to activate. Which is what I find myself doing more times with this deck than anything else, is you actually hold your hand traps back quite a lot, which isn't a big issue with that, but it's just something you need to keep in mind, that you want to make sure the hand traps you're using are going to be so impactful and powerful when they are dropped that you're not going to feel the side effects of not having that attribute in your hand. Moving on to the Earths. So the most important Earth card that we play at the moment is, of course, Kashtira Fenrir. And the reason this is so important is that it's a free summon. And then once you free summon it, you do then get that ability to search out either an Earth attribute or a Fire attribute. On top of that as well, they are very, very easy bridge fodder. And what I mean by that is Fenrir is a 7, so that can get you into Borga, and then Borga can get you into your Mad Love. Fenrir, or if you go for Rise Heart is a level 4 that can then get you into Mad Love, that can then get you into Ryzen, so you've got a direct path to your starter. And is also part of the combo, should you wish to, that allows you to get a Rock of the Vanquished, Shangri-La, Rise Heart, and a Zone Lock on your opponent. Now, obviously, that is the best case scenario, but it is an option that you can play around with. You'll also get an additional draw in that combo as well, because you'll be able to draw off the Borga. Then, of course, for the other Earth monsters, the ones that are Vanquish Souls, we are still playing the 1 Panther and the 1 Caesar. Now, I'm bouncing back and forth between 1 and 2 Caesar. Panther is actually really, really important because you need that as that level 4 and you need that as the Earth bridge. There's been a couple of times where I'm like, right, okay, cool, I've opened up a Fenrir, I've already got my Caesar in the hand, and I want to activate Stake Your Soul, which means my only target is Panther. Panther is also very important if you wanted to play the brand new card that is, sorry for the glare on that one, that is the Battling Boxer King Dempsey. Now, I'm personally not playing this because I feel that by the time you make it, you're just searching out a Raisin for the next turn, which you could already get just by turning the first Raisin you start off with that you're going to need to use to get into that, into an additional material. Now, the only way you can really get into the Battling Boxer is you'll then need to be able to go, okay, cool, special summon down Panther, turn it into Rock of the Vanquished, Rock of the Vanquished then special summons Mad Love from the hand, and then you use Mad Love to search you out Continue, Continue brings back Panther, overlay those two, search out a Raisin. And it's like, well, I still can't drop that Raisin until my opponent's turn. So it's not as effective, but it is one of the cards that are like £10, it might be worth picking up just to have around in case you do fancy putting it in the deck. Then for the rest of the Earth monsters, I am playing Ghost Spell and Haunted Mansion and the 1 Alpha, the Master of Beast. Now, I'm actually getting a lot of results with Alpha, the Master of Beast, because number 1, people aren't expecting it. Number 2, what it does opposed to Prankatops is, yes, it can't out Floodgates, but it does give you that ability to special summon it down not once, but twice in a turn. So I can special summon it down, return it to the hand, non-target return one of my opponent's monsters that may be causing me an issue, or bait that effect out. And then I've got that Earth attribute in the hand to reveal for everything else. And as long as I keep the attack on my monsters down, which is very easy to do once you're linking off into Rock of the Vanquish, which has 0 attack, I can then special summon this down again. And then I obviously can't bounce another card, but it does give me a very nice 3k boss monster on the board. On top of that as well, Panther is a Beast Warrior, so you can also technically bounce 2 if you wanted to. But I've just, like I said, I've had a lot of results where I've drawn this for turn. I've got like 6 cards in hand, and I go, okay, cool. Special summon down Alpha. And my opponent's like, okay, Alpha's effect to bounce back a card. And they're either then forced to negate it because they know I'm going to try and bounce back something like a Baron or something that is going to form as an Omni-Negate, or they're going to go, right, okay, well, I can't stop that, back it comes, and then I can go normal summon Raisin. And I've got that guaranteed Earth in my hand to keep revealing for the effects that I might need to then eventually, once my attack is low enough, special summon it down, continue to build my plays, and then hopefully push for an OTK. So that's it for the main deck monsters. Moving on to the spells. Now, of course, like I said, you do have a bit of flexibility in here. Fenrirs are relatively cheap. They're about £13 an ultra rare copy that I've seen floating around online. So if you are desperate to play it, then I would highly advise picking it up. I do feel that Fenrir is close to the option of being hit on the ban list, but they might decide to hit something like a Rise Heart or a Unicorn more directly first before they hit the Fenrir. But Fenrir could very well be up for the chop, and that's something you might want to consider when you're looking at whether you want to put it in or not. There isn't a direct replacement for this because this is a very good card that, like I said, replaces its attribute, which is what makes it invaluable for the deck. So something you need to keep in mind, if you were to cut it, you'd probably then be looking at putting Ghost Belt up to 3, or you'd be looking at other Earth hand traps, possibly even more Dark hand traps as well, more Bestials. It's entirely up to you on how you want to change it, but you do need to keep in mind that the Earth attribute is actually really important for the Vanquish Soul reveal effects, and it's probably the worst attribute for the Vanquish Souls. And what I mean by that is Caesar is probably the best one of them. Panther is okay. So you could very easily put in a second. So like if you were to cut Fenrir out, you'd also cut out the Rise Heart. You'd very easily put in a second Caesar, and then you'd be looking at other attributes or other hand traps you could add in. Or you could main deck some of your side deck cards, which I'll show you when we get to the side deck. For the spells, of course, triple Stake Your Soul, standard on this card. This card's absolutely amazing. Reveal any attribute in your hand and then special summon a Vanquish Soul of the same attribute but a different name. Like if this was like reveal a Vanquish Soul monster and then special summon one of the same attribute, it wouldn't be anywhere near as good. But the fact that I can reveal a hand trap and get to a Raisin, reveal an Ash, get to a Raisin, reveal a Kaiju, get to a Raisin, is absolutely bonkers. Then we've got 2 Continued and 1 Dust Devil. Now, when I first played this deck, I was always going for Dust Devil as my first card because I was like, cool, I've got a searchable Book of Eclipse. But now, the first one you always go to is continued, in my opinion, and then the second one you go to is a Dust Devil. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. So for those of you that are new to the deck or looking to pick it up, and you're like, why isn't this working for me? I'm always going for Dust Devil, it's such a good card, why am I not getting where I need to go? It's probably because you want to be going for continue first. What continue provides you is it gives you that ability, and a lot of people are actually just going, okay, cool. Normal summon Raisin, search out Borga, turn Raisin or link Raisin into the Rock of the Vanquish, and then using Rock of the Vanquish to special summon down the Borga, or special summon down something like Mad Love, search out continue, and then you set the continue. And the reason you do that is that you're better off using Continue's effect to bring the Raisin back from the graveyard to then pop a card in a column, while you can also then trigger the Raisin's effect to search a monster and then maintain the special summon off of your Rock of the Vanquished to special summon that monster you've just searched off a Raisin. It also allows you to play around Imperms and Veilers, and of course anything that might disrupt the Dark Ruler no more, because it means you can hold the Continue back rather than having everything on the board ready to go. Then I am playing 2 Triple Tactic Talents. You can change this if you want to. It's entirely down to personal preference. I just quite like the idea that because I'm not playing Prosperity, I could use the draw option as well as. But then there are options if you don't have access to talents you can bump up. One of them being Small World. Very easily put this at 3. I've gone back and forth between 3 and 2. 2 seems to work out quite nicely for me because you don't want to see multiples in your hand. But seeing just one of them is very, very important. Now, a lot of people are like, well, Small World's a -1. Yes, that is kind of a bit of a negative. However, what makes it so good is it's one of them ones that, because it's not like part of Desires where it's a negative after you've already activated it and you have to pay a cost, it's one of them ones where your opponent might be like, okay, well, what's the worst they can get? And they let it go through, and that's when you get a devastating card. When you look at your side deck, you can very easily try and find your way into a Droll and Lockbird if you wanted to, because what you've got to remember about Droll and Lockbird is it does actually share the attack stats with the Ghost Sisters. It doesn't share anything else, which is really, really nice. So you can actually use a Ghost Sister in the middle as your bridge. So you could go for a fire into, so let's say, for example, you open up 2 Raisins and a Small World. You can reveal a Raisin. Raisin gets you into Ash. Ash then gets you into Droll and Lockbird, which is really, really kind of cool, especially when you're trying to search for one of the most powerful lockout hand traps of the format. Not to mention in the main deck, you're already directly getting into Kurikara. Kurikara is also another form of a bridge to get to Droll, or Droll to get to Kurikara. And then, of course, you do also have your Kaiju as well. So it really does depend if you're like, okay, I don't want to play Master Beast, I don't want to play the Kaiju, and I don't want to play Kurikara in the main. That's your 3 Droll spots. You just got to remember that the Droll doesn't have an attribute that can be revealed from a Vanquish Soul yet. I can't wait, and I really do hope that we do get like winds and waters for the Vanquish Souls, because that'd be really, really kind of cool. And then the card that is replacing Pot of Prosperity is Pinpoint Landing. Now, it's nowhere near as good as Pot of Prosperity, but what it does is it doesn't clash with your Borga. So what this means is if you're able to, for example, open up Pinpoint Landing and just a Raisin, you can activate Pinpoint Landing, normal summon the Raisin search you out the Borga, special summon down the Borga, trigger Pinpoint Landing, draw into a Dark, reveal the Dark off of your Borga, draw an additional card. And then you can repeat that process during your opponent's turn, because very easy, you can go Borga, draw 1 card. And then if you draw into a Bestial, if you draw into a Caesar, or you've turned it into Rock of the Vanquished, then you're able to special summon a monster down from the hand. Pinpoint Landing again will draw an additional card. The one thing you have to remember about Pinpoint Landing is it is a hard once per turn to draw, so even if you have both copies on the board, you're only going to be drawing 1 card. But you also need to remember that during your end phase, if you do not draw a card via its effect, it sends itself to the graveyard. So you do need to be very, very careful about that. But the idea is that you're basically turning your Borga into a draw 2 every single turn. Your turn, your opponent's turn. Your turn, your opponent's turn. So you're constantly being able to drill through resources that unless your opponent's going to be able to miraculously OTK you that specific turn, you're going to be always having a good chance to break back in order to rebuild a fighting board and even turn the tables yourself. The final 2 cards is 1 Planet Writes Off, so this basically just counts as a 4th version of Fenrir, or another version of Rise Heart should you want to get to it. And then of course Reinforcing the Army, because that is your direct search for Raisin. Now the reason I like Reinforcing the Army, opposed to playing like 1 Duradol, is Duradol still needs a monster. So whether I'm going first or second, if you go open up Reinforcement of the Army and a Duradol, well, which one are you going to use? Well, you're probably going to be going for Reinforcement of the Army because it's just some more consistent. But obviously Reinforcement of the Army is at 1, whereas Duradol is at 3. But again, I personally don't like playing Duradol at 3 because once I've used it once, I'm probably not going to want to use it again, because then that's when you're going to maintain your resource loop by adding your Raisin back with Continue, or adding it back to the hand with your Rock of the Vanquished. And the only way that you lose that hand resource is if they banish the Raisin face down, or just banish it in general, which can happen. But then by that point, you would have regained enough resource. And if they target it at any point, you're just going to bounce it back with something like a Borga or a Caesar. Moving on to the edge deck, again, pretty straightforward and simple on this one. So triple Rock of the Vanquished. If you can only get hold of 2, you can still play it with 2. It's not like one of the ones where, oh, I've got 2 sitting in my binder, I'm not going to play a deck until I have 3 kind of stances. very easily play the deck with 2. You just means you've got to be very, very careful. You can play it a little bit more at 2 now that you're not using Pot of Prosperity as well. Not that this was ever one of the cards that you would banish off Pot of Prosperity, but it does give you that additional option should you need to, especially if you do play into a Unicorn, a Kashtira Unicorn, and they try and rip one of these out. It just becomes a little bit pointless. The one good thing about not playing Pot of Prosperity is you do have the option to play more one-offs. So I've gone with Donna to be able to deal with one-off cards. If you wanted to, you could play the Sky Striker Ace Monster, but keep in mind you would definitely need to be able to make that with Borga and, of course, the Mad Love. So it's a little bit more specific, whereas Donna is just more generic. Security Dragon can be taken out if you want to, but again, it's a very nice bounce option, leading into a Unicorn. You can very easily add an access code into here if you wanted to as well. But what you do need to remember is that your Rock of the Vanquish cannot be used as link material. And then when you look at this lineup, unless you've already gone through a Security Dragon and gone through a Donna, you're only ever really going to have Darks in the graveyard in order to banish and make your plays. For the XYZs, we've got Baguska if you do get hand trapped to absolute death, but you can still make a rank 4. This is probably going to be your best stall option. You've got your X-Tom if you can make a rank 4, but you can't Zeus, so you've got the option to clear a board off. Rank 7s, now this will obviously change if you don't play the Kashtira engine, but the idea is you've got Big Eye to constantly steal, which is really, really powerful. Draco Set to deal with cards like Skill Drain. And speaking on the Skill Drain one, again, a little tip that not everyone knows about Vanquish Souls is there is a way for you to out a Skill Drain. Now, keep in mind, Skill Drain negates on resolution. So if I was to have something like a Vanquish Soul Caesar on the board, I could use this effect and then chain Borga in the hand to target the Caesar, returning the Caesar to the hand, summoning down the Borga, and then resolving the Caesar. Now, the reason it works as Caesar is because it's non-target and it doesn't stay on the card in the same column as this card, which is why you cannot do the same thing with Panther, because Panther can no longer, once it returns to the hand, identify what column it was in, or technically is in, via the text. So your only way to out Skill Drain is a Caesar being bounced back with a Borga, but that's just a little tip that some people don't know, which is obviously very, very important, because you don't want to be your opponent flip a Skill Drain or flip a Floodgate and be like, cool, I pass, I scoop, let's leave it there. You do have a main deck out to them. Then, of course, I've gone back to have the one Shangri-La and the one Rise Heart. Again, if this changes at any point, you can very easily get rid of it. But what the Shangri-La allows you to do is it allows you to zone lock your opponent for 1 and then have the ability to get a Fenrir out during the standby phase. It does play into Nibiru, so I wouldn't advise doing this game 2 or 3 unless you know they don't have a Nibiru in the hand. But what it does give you the ability for is it does give you the ability, like I said, to have a Shangri-La, so it can be protected from a Dark Hole. So it'll let you end your board on a Shangri-La, plus a Rise Heart, Rock of the Vanquished, and then a Fenrir. So it's a little bit overkill, but then it means your opponent's got to deal with a target banish, a target banish, and this can't be destroyed, and you're going to have Rock of the Vanquished. So it's a very kind of cool end board, very powerful. But again, if you're not playing the Cash engine, cut it completely, and that's where more targets can come into play. More so, after Zeus, these particular targets. Now I'm going to show you 3. Only have 2 in the deck as it currently stands, and that's Mud Dragon and Garura. Obviously, if your local environment plays more Darks, then you go for Starving Venom. If they play more into the Dragon and Warrior, which of course is the Manadium end board and can sometimes be the Synchron end board, then you'd actually consider Dragon Knight. And the reason for that is Super Poly is in the extra deck, side deck, which is what can then be utilized more now that you're not playing Pot of Prosperity. But technically, you could also play these if you were playing Pot of Prosperity. You would just banish them if they're ineffective. So that's it for the extra deck. I'm now going to show you the side deck. Now, again, the side deck, I'm going to show you more than 15, just so you can kind of see the different options that you do have available to you. So personally, for me, I like to play Trill Tactics Thrust, and the reason I like to do that is because I do like to play a lot of one-off traps, because my Trill Tactic Thrust can become a multiple options. It could be Dark World or No More if you wanted to, but personally I go with Eradicator, because Eradicator can be used in order to tribute off a Borga, which can be absolutely damaging, because you can go Borga's effect, burn your opponent for 1200, you're already up on life, activate Eradicator, wipe out their traps or spells, whichever is going to be more damaging. D-barrier, of course, if you're in a synchro matchup and you know something like the Synchrons, flipping a D-barrier on them will end their turn and you'll be able to OTK the next turn. Duster as your out and out back row hate, back row removal, and then of course you've got your evenly matched. Now you can very easily play evenly matched at 2, play at 3, you can do the same with D-barrier, Eradicator, you name it. Now we do expect Eradicator to be hit on the next list, so I wouldn't be surprised if this one gets cut completely, but that will then open up your options for other cards that I'm about to show you. But as I showed you on my side decking video, what you're kind of looking for is you're looking for floodgates that you can kind of play, and then you've got your out and out back row hate, you've got board breakers, so you've got a very nice range, and this is only going to take up from like 6 or 7 cards depending on what you want to play. After that point, it then comes down to the hand traps of the format, so Draw, Unlock, Burden, Nibiru. If your local environment is very clued up and are constantly playing around Nibiru, then yeet that out. Very easily changed out should you need to. So then for the final 4 cards, it really comes down to personal preference and local environment. So what I mean by that is, well, if your local environment instantly loses to there can only be 1, this card could very easily be in the main deck. If your local environment plays around this or just doesn't lose to there can only be 1, then you don't even need to play it in your side deck. So it's entirely up to you on that one. That is where Super Poly comes into. Again, format and local environment or bigger tournament environment specific. If your opponents are not playing anything that runs into a Super Poly, then you've got so much more space to play around with. And then the final one is just more consistent back row hate, and that comes in the form of Cosmic Cyclone. This is probably the best back row hate for the deck because obviously Harpy's Feather Duster is a one-off, and you do need to be careful for something like an anti-spell. Believe me, they are being played, and if you come up against Labyrinth, you've got a multitude of floodgates that are also making an appearance. You can very easily look at something like a Lightning Storm as well. So if you go, okay, cool, well, to fill in the remaining space, I'm going to add in 1 more Lightning Storm, and I'm going to go for 3 Triple Tactics, Thrust, and anything else, you very easily can do. You can go for 3 Nib, you can go for 3 Cosmics, you can go for the 3 Super Polys, Tikaboos. If you put Tikaboos in the main, then you can put in your Kaiju and your Kurakara in the side deck. There's so much flexibility, it really is up to you. But what you do need to remember, and this is a very important note, is that when you are taking cards out, keep in mind, if you're taking out an Earth attribute or a Dark attribute or a Fire attribute, you're not putting an Earth, Fire or Dark back in. So you've got to be very, very careful, because if you do the ratios incorrectly and you're opening up your hand, you're like, oh, cool, I've got a light, I've got a wind, I've got a trap, I've got a spell, and I've got a raisin. Okay, cool, but you're missing the second attribute off of the raisin. So raisin can normal summon and get you 1, which could be something like a Borga, but then you don't have the other attribute that you're missing to get the effect off the raisin or the effect off of Borga. So you do need to be very, very careful when you are moving those ratios around. You kind of want to be changing something that is less effective for you. So in the matchup, for example, if you're not worrying about back row, you probably could consider siding out the Panther. You could look at putting Borga down to 2, you could look at Mad Love down to 2. But then you'd probably want to consider, okay, well, then where else do the other spaces come from? You probably, more times than not, you're going to want to try and trade a spell for a spell, a trap for a trap, and then a monster for a monster, while also kind of considering what monster is ineffective. So for example, if Ghost Bell and Haunted Mansion is ineffective, you're going to take that out, you'll put in 2 Nibirus, but then you need to make sure that when you get an Earth to your hand in the form of Fenrir or in the form of something like a Panther, that you're always either looping it back to the hand or just regaining that resource or holding onto it rather than chucking it straight on the board without thinking about it, because then later on during your opponent's turn, you'll be like, right, okay, cool, activate Raisin's effect, reveal fire, and I don't have the other material to reveal. And then that really will cause a massive issue. Now, obviously, in that example of a Raisin, just so I don't get absolutely brutalized in the comments, obviously, Raisin needs to reveal a Fire and a Dark. So if you're like, cool, I've got a Fire, but I don't have the Dark, you've got to be very, very careful. The deck is incredibly powerful, very, very fun. We saw it get 4th at, or top 4 at Worlds, which is really, really cool and impressive. I really do like the deck. I think it's something alongside... I would be amazed if anything directly gets hit. I think if anything, Fenrir will get hit. But then we already saw it at Worlds that it can still do very well without playing the cash engine. The deck is really, really kind of cool. It's got new support coming, and that's only 1 card. I can't wait to see what other cards this deck can be getting. And like I said, I really want them to look into waters and winds as well, because then that would just open up a plethora of other options for you. You can then start playing stuff like the Water Kaiju with Gameciel. You can look at Ghost Mourner and Spooky Dogwood. Droll would then be insanely more effective for you in the deck as well. But then it would mean that your newer versions, so your wind and your water level 4s, and then your ones that are going to special, are then going to need to be a little bit more effective than Raisin. But then could be very, very cool. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. If you do have any questions at all, by all means, please put them in the comments down below. I'll be more than happy to answer them for you. Like I said, this is not the best build around. This is a build going off of what a lot of people have said of what can I do, how can I make it look if I don't play Pot of Prosperity? Well, the answer is Pinpoint Landing. And then if a lot of people are like, well, do you play Gyarados? Do you play or do you play Small World? And then if you do play Small World or Gyarados, why do you play one and not the other? Well, that's what this video is for. This is a video to say I play Small World because I don't play Gyarados because. And also trying to give you other options that you can play around with, what type of hand tracks you'll be looking for, and how you can build Vanquish Souls to make it as effective as possible. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Like I said, any questions, comments down below, more than happy to answer them. And then please make sure you smash that like button, hit that notification bell, and subscribe so you don't miss out on any more upcoming content. For now, as absolutely always, stay safe, and of course, happy dueling.